And even to this day, the public schools that are still in the core epicenter of the city are still the poorest ones in the city.
It's almost like they're afraid to go too deep. Would you say?
Right.
The crime is
Well,
too
and there's
intense.
always, absolutely, and there's always been this sort of hierarchy of placing priority on schools that are already doing well, instead of saying, you know what, all ships can sail at the same, at the same speed or at the same time if we invest in all of them and not leave some neglected. And that's been um, spoken and unspoken, conscious and unconscious. That has been the modus operandi all this time. Even to this day, if you go back to the 70s and you look at how many minorities you have on both the LAUSD board as well as city council, we have been always been outnumbered in both of those arenas by more affluent um, politicians. And if you're always going to be like the Supreme Court, if you're always going to have 4 liberals and 5 conservatives, well, no matter how hard they try, unless they can change one of those guys or gals, point of view, it's always going to be a conservative outcome. And so that has been the situation for us ever since. A lot of what's happened with regards to the Los Angeles Unified School District when Diane Watson was on, well, that was sort of the train still moving really, really fast after civil rights. But they ran out of coal. So as soon as she left, the board became conservative. She was sort of the last, strong arm of the left, or of the liberal. Let's help everybody.
Yes.
You
Let's
know.
try
Now,
something
Rita,
different.
absolutely, and Rita Walters, she came on board right after her, but then by that time, the board had went from a liberal board for almost 10 years, with the mandatory busing being in place and whites being forced to deal and reconcile with the past, and try to make amends and socialize with blacks and brown. It became a conservative board from 1979 till today. So it has not been able to make the shift back, because there has just been a lot of usurping, and a lot of game playing on the political field to prevent a liberal agenda like it was in the early 70s.
Okay. And this,
So
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the story in the series spells all that out, but in the narrative feature, it's more truncated and consolidated, and it packs more of a punch because it's only 90 minutes long. Like, if the movie, if it gets produced, it's only going to be just under 2 hours long. But if it gets produced as a series,
Yeah, more to
then the
play.
entire, yeah, can be totally spelled out and really given the credence that it deserves.
In the film, Sydney and Valentino, one they come from the same home, but their
Mhm.
experiences are totally different. Would you say one is better than the other? And
No, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, in the series, you know how you always have the plot twist in a story?
yes,
So in the series, um, Val, who is being exposed to all the niceties, all the decadence of life, attending this rich school. They have open campus at lunchtime. They have a swimming pool. They've got all the niceties of the world that any school that has money can offer.
hmm
Well, he ends up like a lot of kids, because drugs is a big influence at the richer schools, but you don't get caught like you would in the hood, because they're just not looking at you. They want to go to where the trouble is, right?
yeah,
So just like police officers, a lot of them are trained to hunt. Well, you don't go to the beach to go hunting. You go to the jungle. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? Go to the urban epicenter. So you have that sort of dichotomy at work in the film, and what happens is the older brother, who initially starts off as the antagonist, he becomes the protagonist during the second half of the series, where he actually saves his younger brother's life. You
Wow.
see, yeah. So they both love each other, but they have a love hate for each other because they've grown up differently within the same household. And there's a
Oh,
lot of our own people that these characters will totally mirror in their own within their own dynamics in their own families, and they will say, you know what, I totally identify with him, and I've always talked to my brother this way or my sister that way, and we've always, we were raised differently, but I still love her, I still love him, and it's really it's kind of a Cain and Abel without, well, I don't want to
murder.
tell you the actual,
Don't give
but
up
it
the
has a
punchline.
Cain and Abel, right? It has a Cain and Abel feel to it as
Okay.
well.
I
Yeah,
would ask, I'd
I'll
like,
leave it at
okay. Seeing how things are today, will this film get people to think progressively about overcoming the great divide? I mean, it's a less of a divide today, but there's still a divide. Do you think it will get people to think more progressively in terms of integrating more, doing teaming up together, whether it be business, political, schools, or what
that.
have
Absolutely, absolutely. That's actually the goal of the film. So when you look at the premise of the film, after you've read the whole story or you've watched the whole thing, it's going to force people to have a discussion. There, I've written it in such a way that it won't really allow you to just sit on it without wanting to have a social commentary conversation with someone else that maybe that you grew up with, or maybe your daughter or your son. It's that kind of a story, and it's going to hopefully prompt people to say, look, we need to readdress this thing called integration, because keep in mind, even the word itself, integration, hasn't even really been used since 2000. I mean, it's an old term that's been almost sort of swept under the rug. And so the film, especially in this political climate with Trumpism and all of this going on in a divided state, this is sort of the perfect story that really highlights what segregation will do to people and against other people if it's allowed. And it will also highlight how beautiful it could be if people are willing to work together. And then finally, the final piece is, it's almost like saying, you know what, establishment, you guys need to make up your minds, because either you're going to make our schools in the urban environment whole again,
you?
or you're going to revisit integration and allow everybody the same equal opportunity. Because granted, if the majority of jobs, the majority of the workforce is all operated and controlled by white America, well, they need to at least adhere to their children and our children being able to be socialized together, so that we can all have the same equitable incomes coming into our homes. Otherwise, living a nation within a nation, it won't sustain itself forever. It's just impossible.
Mhm.